That's a short question for a very long answer. But now the nice thing, or the strange thing about Amsterdam and the Netherlands, that it is founded also like Tel Aviv by people. Because there was nothing, because you guys here are trying to get the water in the country. We are trying since 600 years to get water out of the country. So there was nothing there. So we built dikes, and no king and no pope wanted to touch that part of Europe. So it always has been a self-made country, and it's also the Amsterdam people. And what is interesting, listening to you guys, Amsterdam always has made the combination between innovation, creativity, and the spirit of commerce. We never did something innovative or creative, but also because we also knew we could make money out of it. That's a bit selfish. And you know, most people think about, when you think about Amsterdam, most people think about liberal city. And then a lot of people talk very soon about soft drugs. But the funny thing is, when you think about it, Amsterdam was the first city in the world where gay people could get married, now 11 years ago already. Baruch de Spinoza came to Amsterdam because he couldn't print his books nowhere in the world. Portuguese, Spanish Jews came to Amsterdam. There were books printed in Amsterdam you could never print anywhere. And the funny thing is, it's not because we are so politically correct, but we could see we could make money out of it. So it's tolerance combined with making lots of money. And that's interesting, and I see that still happening in Amsterdam. There is a lot of innovation. Of course, we're a very small town, square meters, but we have 12 million visitors every year. So the problem is also in the innovation is what do you do with this problem that there are just too many people? We have also too many bikes, but that's another problem. We are the only city in the world which has a bike problem. We have more bikes than people. So we have 900,000 bikes, which is crazy. So that now really becomes a problem. But what I wanted to say, the innovation also in the city is how do you work together with people who live there, people who visit there, and people who work there. That's a constant battle in the public space. And I strongly believe that the innovation also in Amsterdam has to come from the people who live in Amsterdam. Because I always say, if the people who live in a city like it, they're going to tell it. And they're going to tell it to their family, they're going to tell it to their friends, and then people will come. So you always have to begin with the people. And all this talk about innovative cities, and I said it also yesterday, don't forget the people who live here. Don't forget the people who live in the city. But sometimes in Amsterdam, what are all these people? Where are these 8 million people before my house? I don't want all these tourists. And then you get a very difficult conversation also when you try to do innovative things in the city, because sometimes the people who live there just don't want to buy it anymore. So you have to take them from start. So everything we do in marketing always starts with the people who live there.
Grassroots, okay.
And can I say something about this whole meetup? What Scott said, what I think is very interesting with the Airbnb, it's a big question in Amsterdam. Now we have 6,000 Airbnb spaces, and all the hotels are bad. It's the same as in New York. But when I see in our company, you have all these things like meet a local, like a local, all these things, and people want to go to a city and share with the people who live there. If you guys know, when you go to a city, you want to go in a restaurant where, when you go to Amsterdam, you want to go not to a tourist place. You want to go where the Amsterdam people are. And then you can sit in a restaurant and say, ooh, look, I'm the only tourist here. Now I found a real restaurant.
Very local.
I'm so locally deep. And that's interesting. We now have a service in Amsterdam that it's called Like a Local. Then you can meet up in advance and you have your person in Amsterdam. It goes by social media. They have, I think, 30 ambassadors, 30 students, and then you meet up with a person, and it's free, and you have a coffee, and then she or he tells you about, okay, this is my city, we're going to drink a cup of coffee now, and then go. Okay. And I see that's a big trend, that whole private.
The combination of global and local. Like
yes, but I think this whole global thing makes people want to do more. So what you said, to meet up and to be local and to be smaller and smaller and smaller.
I get the point. The hands on. Wait, Oren, just 1 second. I want to take it to Lukas for a minute because you're doing these DLD city summit cities around. What are the 3 exciting cities for you? Just as.
Well, that's a tough question. It really depends on what we're looking at. If we're looking through the
Don't
lens
be
of
so polite. You're also diplomatics. You go. Give us some
Tel
examples.
Aviv, of course. No, and if you're looking through the lens of Björn Lasse, for example, and we really talk about tech, I believe that as technology is more social now and therefore is coming back to the cities and not the garage anymore, because it is more about living in cities, navigating through cities, making stuff more efficient, like GetTaxi is doing, or Meetups like you're doing. I believe cities are crucial in that, and if we look at tech hubs, I would just throw in Berlin, I would throw in Tel Aviv, and I would throw in, well, I make it 4, okay?
Okay.
New York, and I would throw in Warsaw as an upcoming champion.
Let's talk about Warsaw, the new name. What makes Warsaw innovative? What's so exciting about it? Why do you like it? Why are you pointing it out now?
Well, the location is genius. It's right in the center of Europe. It is very cosmopolitan. The Polish have lived in diaspora for a long time, like a third of them at least. Most of the young people are coming back now because there's investment levels now that are interesting.
Is the beer cheap?
The beer? Oh yeah, and the vodka on top of that. So it's a nice place in that sense as well. It's close to Berlin, so there's a lot of influx in terms of culture as well. And they are the world champions in coding, so there's a lot of available.
The world
coders.
champion for what? Sorry.
Coding. In the coding championships, they always win the first prize. So there's a lot of talent in that. That goes back to the Soviet Union times, where in the division of labor, Polish were always in charge of coding. So there's excellent coders, and they're available at cheap price.
Okay. Glenn is dying to talk for like 20 minutes.
I just wanted to try to connect 3 points that I thought were really key that some other folks were making. Let's just start with Shahar here, because it bases on some important economic analysis. One is the issue about how adaptive, how quickly innovations are adapted. Where there are restrictions, what makes something innovative is lowering the barriers to entry in a rapid way that lowers costs, that increases production and the profits that can be made and shared in terms of the larger economic participation base. That requires getting over something that in a brilliant trend forecasting report was called the brand anxiety matrix. It was done by Cahill. And it's really important to look at that matrix to see what are the things would make it less adaptive perhaps in Moscow or quickly to adapt to new technology versus in Tel Aviv, and how they can be treated in terms of marketing technology. They also came up with a concept that moves beyond just the transactional basis about repeated transactions. In game theory, we call that repeat gains. So of prolestination, trying to have extended engagement over a prolonged period of time, not only about points of sale. That just is a dead end. The second point is, I think, this deals with the idea of linking the local and the global. This whole birth of microcurrencies in Brixton and in Leeds or grants and dollars that has a long history in marketing, from mileage and other types of things, which creates some sort of symmetry between people within a market is really key. It also stops a basic urban economic problem of leakage of the economic activity outside of the physical place and ties it back to the locality.
So are you suggesting or recommending or predicting there's going to be a rise of local city-based currencies?
Yes. And then not only that, but just in terms of peer-to-peer lending, the things that go on in terms of types of non-exchange traded activities in financial markets is increasing enormously in terms of private placements and otherwise that don't go through the exchanges. The third point was, I think, going back to this point about Amsterdam, which in its time in the 17th century was called the New Jerusalem. It was the center of rationality, it was the center of openness. It was a place where still is, yes, but surrounded by violence, raging seas, and raging wars around them, but created an open society within, and then trade and commerce to without, and then created the Amsterdam Stock Exchange the first joint stock-traded companies, which was in a way in order to carve channels of investment into these areas that were totally new, that were an attempt to manage the risk that we were talking about. So again, these 3 points. I mean, overcoming some type of branding, this issue of how you overcome adaptive technologies or restrictions to it. 2, this notion of how you do create the linkages between the local economy and the global economy so that there's not a drainage of value only outside of the city and that there's an economic basis created. And 3, the 3 T's that you talked about the creative cities. What enables that type of that became out of Amsterdam in the 17th century, the DNA which a country like Israel or the United Kingdom or the United States or all the other countries that seek to carve a channel into the democratization not only of political participation but economic participation and of access to capital have to depend upon.
Yeah, because I want to move to Bjorn.
Yeah, but there's a limit to this, because the point is in this whole profiling as a liberal city, and you're absolutely right. At a certain moment, you become a city of soft drugs and sex and sleaze, and that's a thing which in Amsterdam happened in the whole liberal thing, and then the image started to turn, and which is bad. So we really tried to change that back to culture, back to these values of what liberal city is.
Okay, let's bear in that in mind, and let's go to Bjorn, please.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of conversation about very high level, like what is innovation and how can we influence it and change it. And I thought I'd just throw in sort of my personal experience quickly as maybe something more specific. When I came to San Francisco 5 years ago, the first feeling I had, I felt like I just came home. It was a place where there were tons of other people like me who were thinking about building cool stuff, trying to create impact in the world, and those people were from all over the world. More than half of the founders in the Valley are immigrants, and people who were dropouts, high school dropouts. My first business partner in San Francisco was a high school dropout, and I worked with PhDs, people with any kind of background, from tech background to business and arts and whatever. And all of these people come together, they work together, they live together. I, for most of my time, lived with other people in a house. For example, once we lived with 25 people in one place. I had a university dropout who built a new way of building solar panels that increased the effectiveness by 40% at the same price. One of the biggest innovations in solar. Another guy was working on asteroid mining. Another guy was a philosopher from Greece who worked on automating lawyers.
So the bottom line, I lost you.
Huh?
The bottom line that you're saying, I lost you a little bit.
And all of these, this is what innovation is like. All of these people work together. They create amazing stuff. We have, had 3D printers and all kinds of devices within the house, and people were playing around. And that spirit is something that is not necessary. I mean, I'm not. It's not like the San Francisco city or someone sat there and said, all right, let's make this city innovative. It's just something that happened, and that comes through the spirit, through the people that
through the spirit, through the
people,
through the openness. This is Bjorn says, I want to go to Leo. Leo has been working in the last couple of months on City Summit, the event we had yesterday, and you are all through the internet and all through meeting people. Give us an inspiring city you've met, or something that you said after working so much on this topic, and not again San Francisco, Berlin, Tel Aviv, London, New York. We're going back to those cities. Let's hear it from a different angle, because I think for us, for the people that want to work, we have to look. I was just one thing. A week ago, I was in New York. Michael Bloomberg invited all the city professionals to be in New York, what we call City Lab. And came up there a guy from Bangalore. He said, I can't hear you guys all the time talking about New York, Amsterdam, London. You don't know what we're dealing with in the Far East. So the picture is not only Europe and United States. Is there a different story, or I'm just...
I think something that you would like to try to do was
exactly what I wanted to say. We had, this year, we put a big emphasis on trying to create connections between Tel Aviv and cities in Asia Pacific. And one of the things that was so evident is that it's so difficult to create, look, it's easy to bring people from Berlin, from Amsterdam, from San Francisco, from New York to Tel Aviv because there's a common language. Because you speak about innovation in Tel Aviv, you're talking about the same thing that you're talking about in different places around the world. And when we were talking to people from whether it be Singapore or Taipei or Beijing, it's not just that it's not the same language that you speak, but innovation means different things. It comes and manifests itself in different ways. And I think that's something, it's a shame there's no one from an Asia Pacific city on the stage, but it's something to keep in mind when Tel Aviv is trying to connect to the East, as we call it, that innovation isn't spoken in the same way that it's spoken here. It comes from a different place. It's more institutional, it's less bottom-up, it's more top-down. And things that are, I think that's the most interesting thing that came up from the whole sweeping the world that we did.
So we don't have the tools yet in all the places. Yes, there's a...
I had the luck to be in Dhaka in Bangladesh.
You are, your name and?
Catherine. From Berlin. and I was in Dhaka in Bangladesh, and I met people there who work on innovation products. And of course, people and products we meet here, they don't have smartphones, but they do projects like support agriculture via SMS service in rural areas because they need that, and they increase the possibility for the farmers to earn more money, or they do health systems over there. So there's young companies and startup companies in Dhaka, Bangladesh. So you only have to travel, and all over the world you will meet amazing people where you can learn something from.
So you're talking about innovation through healthcare and through agriculture, through smartphones. This is something we don't, and I mean, we city people don't deal with innovation, but yeah.
Yeah,